Thank you. Thank you. It's great to see you, and it's great to follow a great discussion founded on truth. So what I'll talk about today is my son did turn 4. I spent the morning with him, and he's the reason I ran for president. I look at our kids and their generation. I'm worried they're not going to be able to live the same American dream that I did. My parents came to this country 40 years ago with no money. In a single generation, I've gone on to found multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. Did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, raising our 2 sons, following our faith in God. That's the American dream, and it isn't going to exist for our kids and their generation unless we all step up and actually do something about it. We're in the middle of a war in this country. And I call this a war because there's no middle ground here. Either you believe in American exceptionalism or you believe in American apologism. It is not a war between black and white, as the media would teach you to believe. It's not even a war between Democrats and Republicans, not really. It's deeper than that. It is a war between those of us who love the United States of America and our founding ideals, and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. It is a war between the managerial class in the deep state and the everyday citizen. It is a war between the Great Reset and the Great Uprising. And there is no compromise on one side of this war or the other. Either you believe in merit or you believe in group quotas. You cannot have both. Either you believe in free speech or you believe in censorship. You cannot have both. Either you believe that this is the greatest country known to mankind, or you believe in apologizing for who we are. You cannot have both. And I think right now we need a commander-in-chief who's going to lead us to victory in that war. And that's why I endorsed and will support Donald J. Trump to be the next president of the United States, as I know everyone in this room does. But it goes beyond the next 4 years. It's about the next 250 years that we have as a country. And I'll tell you, our Republican Party, I'm going to speak the truth here, we have grown lazy. And I don't mean just lazy in the get-out-the-vote operation sense of lazy. I mean lazy in a deeper sense of defining who we even are and what we actually stand for. See, the left is actually very good at this. They'll give you a vision. It's not the right vision, but they'll give you something. Race, gender, sexuality, climate. And we're sitting here criticizing that left-wing vision, but without offering an alternative vision of our own. What do we actually stand for? What does it mean to be a Republican in the year 2024? What does it mean to be an American in the year 2024? To me, it means we believe in the ideals of 1776. Ideals like merit and the pursuit of excellence. That you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That's why we need to end affirmative action and DEI agendas and group quotas in every area of American life. It's been a cancer on our soul, and the woke indoctrination in our military. That's why we stand for merit. It means we believe in the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That is why we need to build not only the wall, but use our own military to secure our own southern border. Stop funding sanctuary cities. Stop funding Central America until they've stopped the flow of migrants. End birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals in this country. And yes, deport anybody who is in this country illegally, because that's what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. What does it mean to be an American? It means the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not the shadow government in the deep state that's pulling the strings today. Need to get in there and actually fire, not just reform these agencies, fire 75% of those federal bureaucrats. That is how you drain the swamp. Shut down government agencies that should no longer exist. FBI, ATF, CDC, U.S. Department of Education. Get in there and actually shut them down. That's how you revive this republic. If the next U.S. president, Donald Trump, can't work for you all for more than 8 years, neither should those federal bureaucrats reporting into him either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of civil service protections. That is how you drain the swamp. That is what it means to be an American. What does it mean to be a citizen of this nation? What would our founding fathers say? It means we don't depend on an enemy for our modern way of life. That means we declare independence from China when it comes to our pharmaceuticals, our supply chain, our defense industrial base in this country, and our semiconductors. That's the Declaration of Independence Thomas Jefferson would sign if he were alive today. It means that we're proud of our country, that we take care of our veterans, the people who have actually served this country. We don't cast them to one side, but we honor them, and we respect their contributions. That you know something about the country if you're graduating from high school. I think every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen of this country. You got to have skin in the game. You got to know something about a country if you're actually going to save that country. It means we stand for the truth, that we speak without apology. As you just heard in that last discussion, that's what it means to be an American. Stand for truth. God is real. There are two genders. Never thought I'd have to say that one. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Drill, frack, burn coal, use nuclear energy. An open border is not a border. Reverse racism is racism. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family isn't a bad word. It's the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism isn't a bad word. It lifts us up from poverty. Not crony capitalism, but the real thing. There's 3 branches of government in this country, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth. We stand up for the truth. That's who we are. That's what won us the American Revolution 250 years ago. And you know what our founding fathers would say if they were alive today? Founding fathers would say that you still have another 250 years and then some still left. But we're going to have to step up and seize it for ourselves, just like our founding fathers did the first time around in 1776. You know, I ran for president. I'm 38 years old. People said that was a little young to run for president. Thomas Jefferson, he was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Think about that. He invented the swivel chair while he was at it. This was a guy who was fluent in 7 languages, could write in 2 of them. He was a guy who wrote, I tell this to students when I talk to them, he wrote 16,000 letters over the course of his life. And so I see high school students, they're like, oh, 16,000 letters, that's like, 4,000 words. Okay, I could probably do that. No. He wrote 16,000 letters, essays over the course of his life. When he sat down to write the Declaration of Independence, he felt like he was going to sit there for a long time. He invented the swivel chair. The modern swivel chair that we sit in today was invented by Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers. He invented the polygraph test. These were the guys who actually set this country into motion. What would we say today? You can't do that. You're not an expert. You didn't get a 4-year college degree. Shut up, sit down, do as you're told. Not our founding fathers. These were the pioneers, the explorers, the unafraid, the people who would not be stopped by somebody else telling them what they can and cannot do. It's not just Thomas Jefferson. Every signer of that Declaration of Independence, it's the same story. Benjamin Franklin invented musical instruments used by Mozart, by Beethoven. He invented the Franklin stove, one of the leading discoveries in thermodynamics. He used to actually invent the Franklin stove, which was a great invention in his day, the lightning rod, the bifocal spectacle, all invented by a guy who actually co-signed the Declaration of Independence. Robert Livingston, he was an ambassador to France, while as a side hobby, along with Robert Fulton, invented the steamship, one of the key components of the Industrial Revolution. Robert Sherman actually was a guy who was a self-trained attorney. He didn't go to law school. He taught himself. He still practiced law, ultimately became one of the most successful attorneys before then joining the governing body of Yale University to help a next generation get educated like him. We miss that in our country today. There was something in the water back then, something in the culture that said that you don't have to respect the boundaries that somebody tells you that you occupy because of your race or your gender or your skin color or because of the degree that you receive. No, you can achieve anything you ever set your mind to with your own hard work and commitment and dedication and ambition and curiosity. That was the founding spirit of this country. That's what our founding fathers would tell us if they were here today, that it's up to you. It's not going to be some political messiah coming from the White House or anywhere else to save us. Our politics doesn't work that way. If we are going to be saved, it's going to be because we step up and save ourselves. Every one of us has to do our part. If our founding fathers could stand up to King George across the other side of the ocean and fight and win the American Revolution, the least we could do today is when you're the only person in a room who believes what you do, you can stand up and say it. Say it with conviction. Say it with a spine. Close that gap. People will say one thing in private, another one in public. You want to know what the best measure of the health of American democracy is? We hear about our democracy a lot. The best measure of the health of our democracy is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. Right now we're doing poorly. It doesn't have to stay that way. Yeah, we'll criticize our founding fathers. I'll talk about them. We talk about the importance of talking about our history without actually talking about history. I made a point, every speech I'm giving from now on, I'm not just going to talk about teaching our kids history. Let's actually talk about our history itself. They'll say they were slaveholders. They were hypocrites. They couldn't believe in those ideals because they didn't practice what they preached. Well, let me tell you something. If every person were judged by saying that you don't believe in an ideal, if you live short of that ideal, none of us would have ideals at all. I view it the other way. We're a nation not of gods, but of men. And a nation founded on ideals in the first place. And I would rather live in a country that aspires to those ideals and falls short of them than to live in a country that does not have any ideals at all. Nobody talks about China or Iran this way. It's because we have ideals that we have the permission, the ability to fall short of them. The best evidence that we have ideals at all is that we fall short of them. So you hear about Thomas Jefferson as a slaveholder. What you didn't hear was John Adams was actually a principled abolitionist. He didn't have to be. Around him, the normal thing to do was to be a slaveholder. He didn't do it. Now his son, John Quincy Adams, was our first non-founding father who became a president. Now, this was a guy who, in his father's legacy, he wanted to abolish slavery. He didn't quite get around to doing it as a president. He tried everything he could in his post-presidential career. He served one term, left, wasn't terribly successful as a president, tried a lot of different things. But he was called back into what pulled him into public service in the first place. He got elected as a congressman, actually. Think about that happening today. It's the only guy it's happened in U.S. history where after serving as president of the United States, he went back to serve as a mere congressman in U.S. Congress, served for multiple terms, and he went there with one objective: to abolish slavery. So back when he was serving in Congress, they had something called the gag rule in Congress. Talk about the restrictions on speech today. They had restrictions on speech back then, too. Actually, they had an agreement. Some of the congressmen from the South had created a rule that said you cannot say the word slavery on the Congress floor. This guy's been the U.S. president already. He has nothing to lose. He's just a congressman. He's going in there for service, so he doesn't care about getting kicked out of Congress. They did it back then, too. He said the word on the Congress floor: slavery, 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 slavery. So he was trying to get himself expelled. They put him on trial for his expulsion from Congress. He uses his own trial to get expelled, to make the case for abolition. Goes on for a couple of weeks. By the end of that trial, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., at the end of those 2 weeks, Congress had actually rescinded the gag rule in the first place so they could actually debate the question, and the rest was history from there. This was a guy who then died on the Congress floor. He had a stroke in the middle of giving a speech for the country that he served and that he loved. He died of a stroke in the middle of that speech. Now, they kept him alive for 2 more days. He had the stroke. He hit the deck. They took him upstairs to one of the anterooms, upstairs in the congressional chamber. Kept him alive for another 2 days before he died in the building where he went back to serve. And they asked for volunteers of who was going to carry this man out, who was actually going to help lead the ritual rites of carrying him out of that building. And the person who raised his hand was a little-known first-term congressman from Illinois by the name of Abraham Lincoln. These are the stories of American history that we don't tell anymore. Talk about Jefferson being a slaveholder without talking about John Adams or his son John Quincy Adams, or what goes on to Abraham Lincoln and the eventual realization of our ideals, or at least the pursuit of them. That's American exceptionalism. Those are the stories of our national history that we need to revive in this country. We've lost that sense of pride, that inner animal spirit that used to ground us as Americans. See, young people today, and as I'm a young person, well, I'm talking about the next generation. What do I see? My two sons and their generation. They're lost. They're hungry for purpose, direction, meaning, identity. At a point in our national history when the things that used to fill that void, faith in God, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. And when you have a vacuum that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. Pick your favorite one. It almost doesn't matter what it is. Wokeism, transgenderism, climatism, COVIDism, Zelenskyism. That's what it is. It's a religion. But we obsess over that too much. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And my call to you all tonight is, I want our movement anymore not just to be running from something. We got to be running to something. Back to our vision of what it means to be an American, what it means to be a citizen of this nation. Not some global citizen fighting climate change somewhere or other, but a citizen of this nation, the United States of America. Still that country where we will look our kids in the eye and mean it when we tell them that you do get ahead in the United States with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication. And that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to. And with your help, that is what we are going to revive to save this great nation. Thank you, guys. God bless you and your families. And may God bless our United States of America. Thank you, guys. I'll keep my promise. We'll take a couple questions. Let's do it, guys. Thank you.
I'm too tired to walk up the steps. It's been a long day. All right, this is the lightning round because Vivek said he'd take questions. Worst woke company?
BlackRock.
Easy.
It's actually a pretty easy question, yeah.
Rafi, Federer, or Djokovic?
Djokovic.
Of course. Why? Why?
Because he actually had the courage to stand up. Right? He wasn't my favorite at first, right? You know, we could talk about the graceful strokes. I think, those guys can all hit the tennis ball in a different way, but who has the fortitude, the spine to actually stand up when it was unpopular? That was Novak Djokovic. He sacrificed the number of Grand Slams for his own principles, and now we know he was right, so he won me over.
We only saw you hit forehands. Do you also have a good backhand?
I like to hide my weaknesses.
Fair enough. You've been on the campaign trail with a lot of talented people. And you've met a lot of politicians over the years. We know what you think about Donald Trump. Not Donald Trump, but everyone else, including those you ran against for president. Who are you most impressed with?
Of the people who ran for president?
No, or just generally. By the way, you can admire people on the left for the fact that they're killers.
Yeah. No, I'll give you a guy who didn't run for president this time, but who ran last time, who I respect. I don't agree with him on everything. Rand Paul, actually. Because I think that this is a guy who, the tempting thing to do is you sort of see what direction the winds are blowing. And sometimes that's what it takes if you want to win an election. But he stuck to principle, and I respect that. And he didn't get the votes he needed to get anywhere near being president. But having been through this process, respect a guy who actually stayed tethered to his principles the whole time.
if Vivek Ramaswamy had some kind of power to change, you have a lot of power, to change something in our society, in our government. One thing, you can only do one thing, and it would be immediate. What would be the one thing you'd change?
Shut down the fourth branch of government. We have three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. Let's go back to what our founders set in motion, and the rest becomes that much easier. Shut down that deep state, everything else follows. That'd be the one thing I get done.
Give it up for Vivek Ramaswamy. Thanks for being at CPAC.
Thank you, guys. God bless you, and may our best days still be ahead of us. I am confident they will be, guys. Thank you.